The Convention on the Right of the Child was adopted in New York on the eve of the 90s, exactly on November 20th, 1989. This convention has been signed by 193 countries, which means 5 more than the members of the United Nations, who are only 185. It has been ratified by 191 countries. Only 2 have not ratified it. This means that it is perhaps the most universal of all treaties, of all conventions that have ever been signed, to demonstrate how much the international community, how much governments, how much people care about the children and their future. The committee is tasked with the monitoring of the implementation of the convention by the states that have signed and ratified it. The committee is composed of 10 persons who must all be of high moral standard and have competence in the field. It meets 3 times a year in Geneva, every time for about 3 weeks. And practically, it does examine all the reports of the states who have the duty to inform the committee how they are implementing the convention. If you want, the committee also interprets somehow the convention, and it is creating a body of law in this, which is very useful for all the scholars in the field. Yes, the convention definitely prohibits corporal punishment. There are several relevant provisions, and especially 3 articles. If you allow me, I would quote from them. The first is Article 19. It states, "States parties shall take all appropriate legislative, administrative, social, and educational measures to protect the child from all forms of physical or mental violence, injury, or abuse, while in the care of parents, legal guardians, or any other person who has the care of the child." Every member of this committee serves in his absolutely personal capacity, not as a representative of a state or of an organization. The 10 members of the committee are accountable only to their conscience and to the children of the world.
A very fine example of this syndrome is the reaction in the United States to the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. Every other nation in the world, with the exception, I believe, of Somalia, which has no organized government at this point, every other nation has accepted that convention. And the United States is refusing to accept that convention. It's been signed, but the opposition against that convention from the religious right and many conservative quarters is so violent that it hasn't even been brought up to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to be considered. Now, why is the United States alone among civilized nations of the world not to join the convention? One major reason is that the convention explicitly protects children and gives them a right to protection from physical harm. And this is seen as an inroad or an assault on the constitutional rights of parents under the United States Constitution. Now, I think that's an absolutely incorrect view. And I believe the critics of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child are absolutely wrong. It is not a threat to parental rights or a threat to family values. But the fact that parental rights have been given a constitutional dimension in the United States has made it much more difficult for us to accept and understand the principles that are accepted by the rest of the civilized world. There is concern that the convention would do away with the parents' so-called right to corporal punishment. Now, first of all, I don't believe that this is a right under the Constitution of the United States, but the very fact that people are citing a right to batter children under the Constitution of the United States gives an indication of how the enlistment of constitutional values in a rather one-sided way to protect the rights of parents and yet to exclude children from also being thought of as rights bearers under the Constitution. This is something that is really unique to the United States and very troubling, very problematic, especially when we look at the international context and see that the UN Convention has been the most widely and rapidly accepted human rights convention of modern times, and we are alone in opposing it. If you speak to the average person about, quote, children's rights, very often you're greeted with amazement, bafflement. What could you possibly be talking about? I don't know how many times I've had people say, oh, children's rights, you must be talking about children divorcing their parents. And I have to stop them and say, no, I'm talking about children being battered. I'm talking about children in forced to work, sold into slavery in various parts of the world at this time. I'm talking about serious invasions of human rights. I think we have a tendency to think of children as cute, children's lives as happy and simple and protected, and we like to shield ourselves from the reality that throughout history children have been the objects of intense discrimination.